1.4 is soon upon us, and in the patch we're all gonna be getting one copy of Is Harumasa. He is an electric attacker and he is quite powerful and he is very flashy and actually very fun to play. He has a high skill ceiling and a lot of his damage depends on you playing him right. So let's get into it! Hello friends, my name is Hako and in this video I'm gonna be teaching you how to play Harumasa. Now Harumasa is a new electric attacker coming in the 1.4 and we're all getting one copy of him for free. And I've been in the fortunate position that I've gotten to try and test out Harumasa extensively on the creator beta servers. And I gotta come clear with y'all, in the beginning I was kinda underwhelmed with a poor little boy. I was absolutely blown away by like how cool his animations are and like how just good it feels fighting as him. It kinda reminds me about playing like Jane. You're very fast, it's a lot of like dodging around, like being very nimble and a lot of flashy stuff happening. In a lot of ways he's like more flashy and feels a little bit newer than Miyabi. But his damage just wasn't there until I actually learned how to play him proper. So I consider Miyabi to be kind of easy to pick up. Like you can pick Miyabi up and you know you will do like millions of damage whether you know how to play her or not. Harumasa, I think you're gonna be underwhelmed unless you figure out how to play him. So let's dive into just that. Now every character in Zenless Zone 0 has kinda, you know, their bread and butter. Like what is their shtick? What is their gimmick? Like where does their damage come from? With Harumasa it is his Electro Quivers, it is his dash attack and it is X marking enemies. And the biggest one of those is his Electro Quivers. So we once again have a new resource to keep track of. Although you won't be seeing this up by Harumasa's name, instead you will be seeing this on the field. When Harumasa does certain abilities, small little arrowheads will be spawned on the field, and a maximum of 6 of them can be spawned at once. Now these little arrowheads are activated by Harumasa's basic attack, Falling Feather. Remember this name because it is gonna come up a lot. Now Falling Feather can be activated by holding your special attack button after you're done with the fifth hit of a basic attack, a special attack, an ES special attack, or a chain attack. You can also manually do a Falling Feather by just holding down the attack button and you will kind of come into a more zoomed in third person mode and you will fire an arrow. If there's any Electro Quivers out on the fields, whenever you do Falling Feather, all of these arrowheads will seek out the enemy that you just hit and they will apply this enemy with 1 stack of Electro Prison per arrowhead that's hitting them. So if you have 2 out on the field, an enemy will be hit with a 2 stack of Electro Prison. And if we have 6 arrowheads on the field, if we have 6 Electro Quivers, they will be hit with 6 stacks of Electro Prison. So what does these Electro Prison debuffs on enemies do? Well, whenever there's an enemy on the field suffering from 2 or more of these stacks, Harumasa enters his Awakened mode. Now, also pay attention class, this is important. This is also very much part of his bread and butter. Whenever Harumasa is in his awakened state, his dash attack, Hiten no Tsuru, changes to Hiten no Tsuru slash. So if you've seen Harumasa like go from being an archer to a swordsman, this is the move. So this turns our dashing attack into a long range covering kind of sword slash. We furiously like throw ourselves at an enemy and we slashes at them. Every slash consumes 2 stacks of Electro Prison from the enemy, which means that if we have afflicted them with 6 Electro Prisons, we get to do 3 slashes, then we must reapply more Electro Prisons to keep on slashing. Once all stacks of Electro Prison on an enemy has run out, Harumasa will no longer be in his awakened state. So this is the bread and butter when it comes to Harumasa. Getting Electro Quivers out on the field, impaling an enemy with them using Falling Feather, then going in, slashing until there's no more stacks, then doing it all over again. Almost all of Harumasa's damage comes from his dash attack in his awakened state. And if we take a look at his additional abilities and core skills, we'll see that these very much plays into his dash attack. We have core passive Daybreak. The crit rate of dash attack Hiten no Tsuru slash increases by 25%. And when Harumasa's dash attack hit the Notsuru / triggers a critical hit against an enemy, he gains 1 stack of a Gleaming Eagle for up to a maximum of 3 stacks per use of the skill and stacking up to 6 times. Lasting 5 seconds, repeated triggers reset the duration. Each stack of Gleaming Edge increases the crit damage of dash attack hit the Notsuru / by 12%. So we just passively get an increased crit rate of 25% to our dash attack. And the more we crit with it, the more we build up Gleaming Eagle stacks, and this will cap us out on a 66% increased crit damage to Harumasa's dash attack. So this is obviously really good. And once you know to play Harumasa properly, keeping this kind of maxed is gonna be no problem. But that is also like one part of, you know, reaching his skill ceiling is like being fast enough with this entire rotation. And if we take a look at his additional ability to overclock, we can kind of see what the devs want us to do with Harumasa. When Harumasa's attacks hit stunned enemies or enemies under attribute anomaly, his damage increases by 40%. That's massive. When Harumasa's Falling Feather hits stunned enemies or enemies under attribute anomalies, it will apply 2 stacks of Electro Prism to the target. This is also freaking massive. So Harumasa has 2 different teams he can be running, either a stun team or an anomaly team, or in some cases, like if you run Harumasa, Bernice and Lighter, you can get the best out of both worlds. And this is why his damage kind of seems lacking if you don't use your brain and like build around Harumasa. Because he gets a 40% increase to everything he does if he hits a stunned enemy or if he hits an enemy suffering from an attribute anomaly like Assault or Shocked. So obviously he's kind of balanced to kind of have this going at all times. So if we don't have this going at all times, well, he's gonna be feeling a little bit lackluster. And there's also some other incentives to like running him with either stun or anomaly agents. So once again, class, we get 2 Electro Quivers from like doing the final hit of his basic attack. His basic attack string is a 5-hit combo, with the last one providing us with 2 Electro Quivers. Remember, we can always follow up the last hit by like holding the special attack button, and we will then do a Falling Feather. And I want you to like get this into practice, because using a Falling Feather in this way is the fastest way of like getting your Electro Quivers to apply Electro Prism to the enemies. And here comes a little bit of a unique part about him. After Harumasa has done one of his chain attacks, the next time he does his 5th hit of his basic attack combo, instead of generating 2 Electro Quivers, he will generate 6. So this kind of incentivizes the stun team. So let's take a look at what's the anomaly equivalent of this. The anomaly equivalent is if there are no Electro Quivers on the field when any squad members applies an attribute anomaly to an enemy, generate 6 Electro Quivers. This effect can trigger once every 12 seconds. Now pay very close attention to the wording here. If there are no Electro Quivers, you spawn 6 whenever anybody in your team does an attribute anomaly, so Assault or Burn, Disorder, etc. But this only triggers if there are no Electro Quivers on the field. So if you say that you're running a Bernice team and you see that you're about to hit the enemy into burning with Bernice's afterburn, make sure that you do not have any Electro Quivers out on the field, because if you have 2 on the field, the additional 6 you would get from Bernice doesn't spawn. So here we see that Harumasa's teammates can help out with generating Electro Quivers, either by bringing a stun agent so Harumasa can do chain attacks, or by bringing an anomaly agent so the anomaly agent will spawn in Electro Quivers for Harumasa. And if you just want to like turn your Electro Quivers into Electro Prisms as soon as possible, say that you're playing Yanagi, you trigger Disorder, 6 Quiver spawn, then you switch back to Harumasa, the fastest way to get these into the enemy is by holding down the attack button, so you get the zoomed in over shoulder camera angle and doing your Falling Feather this way. Remember, once again, Falling Feather can be triggered in 2 different ways. Either you hold down the special attack button at the end of the 5th basic attack, or at the end of a special attack, or at the end of an EX special attack, or at the end of a chain attack. But if you're just swapping in from having Quivers spawned by an attribute anomaly, the fastest way is holding the attack button and firing at the enemy this way. Then doing a dash attack will launch at the enemy and you will go slashing at them. You will then typically do 3 slashes, then you're gonna be out of marks. If you at this point have enough energy to do an EX special attack, you do that, you press the EX special attack, but then you also hold the button afterwards to turn it into a falling feather. The enemy will get hit by falling feather, and the falling feather will trigger the electro quivers to go into the enemy. The enemy will suffer from electro prison, and you will once again go to town and like hit the enemy. And this is your basic rotation when it comes to playing Harumasa. And like mastering your efficiency when it comes to this is gonna be like your growth as a Harumasa player. It's what's gonna separate the newbies from the goodies, because this is a very fast rotation and it gets more complicated, like, you know, the more characters that you weave into it. Remember, his additional ability overclock is amazing when it comes to applying electro prison to the enemies. And class, what did we need to do to trigger that? We need to hit a stunned enemy or an enemy suffering from attribute anomaly with falling feather. Class, once again, what was falling feather? It is when we hold the special attack button after the 5th hit of our attack string, a special attack, an ES special attack, or a chain attack. So kind of get this into your core muscle memory when it comes to Harumasa. Be ready to hold your special attack button once you're done with the basic attack, once you're done with an EX special attack, once you're done with a chain attack. And remember, we do 40% increased damage to enemies suffering from an attribute anomaly or a stunned enemy. So we have to build around that when it comes to the team. So Rina, for example, is quite freaking good with Harumasa. Rina's buff is really nice for him, like her pen ranger buff. And also Rina's additional ability increases the amount of time an enemy is shocked. And once you get used like the damage Harumasa does on an enemy that is stunned or suffering from an attribute anomaly, you'll feel like he is hitting like a wet fart whenever we're not hitting on such an enemy. What's everybody? I has a cat. You don't usually get to see this one, you usually see the black one. This one isn't as much of a lap kitty, but sometimes. So like your core opener and combo is gonna depend a lot on like what team you choose to bring Harumasa in. What I've found to like be the most bang boo for my buck is if I'm bringing an anomaly agent, kind of have that anomaly agent try and inflict the enemy with their anomaly, whether it is fire or whether it is shocked, and then I switch, and once the enemy is suffering from an anomaly, I then switch to Harumasa and I start doing his combo. And then the combo usually goes the full basic attack string, so hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then I hold the EX special button, and then I do falling feather. The falling feather will trigger 2 additional stacks of electro prison on a target, and the 2 electro quivers that we just triggered for doing the full attack string will also like create 2 stacks on the enemy, which means that we can dash in and we can do 2 slashes on the enemy. By that point, you should have enough energy to do an EX special attack. So then we do an EX special, and so we click EX special, then we click the button once again to trigger falling feather. The 6 electro quivers that got spawned during the EX special attack will be triggered by the subsequent falling feather, and it will hit the enemy. Now the enemy should still be suffering from whatever anomaly you first afflicted it with, whether it's fire or shocked. So this means that all of the 6 quivers, they do 6 stacks of falling feather. They do 6 stacks of the falling prison, and then since we're falling feathering, an enemy suffering from an attribute anomaly, we get an additional 2. So an enemy can max suffer from 8 stacks of electro prison, and we're only able to like spawn 6 quivers out at a time. So we get the extra 2 from the additional ability overclock whenever we do falling feather on an enemy suffering from an attribute or an enemy that is stunned. So what I have found with Harumasa is that if we run him in a pure stun build, say for example that you are running Harumasa, Kolida and Lucy, I find that the damage is a little bit lacking, since Harumasa's additional bit overclock will kind of only be active whenever the enemy is stunned. And this is fine for some content, but if we're doing like a harder boss, like the boss is gonna spend less than 10% of its time stunned no matter who you bring, and the anomaly build-up isn't really there. So what I've personally found to like be the best teams to run with him are teams that incorporate another anomaly agent. But there are some niche exceptions. For example, Harumasa, Shinji and Rina is a very potent team, And what I found to be the best here is if you smack Rina on like an anomaly mastery on disc 6, so she's even better at like applying the shock effect. Because Harumasa's damage basically gets cut in half whenever his overclock additional ability isn't active. So we always want to try and keep this one active. And before we talk about the drive discs, let's just take a little bit of a look at the stat screen. You can see that crit rate and crit damage is heightened up in yellow, and these are the stats I want to like try and go for. Remember, we don't want to like overcap ourselves on crit rate. We gain an extra 20% from, or an extra 25% from the core skill at Daybreak. So preferably do not like surpass 75 on this. And if you have Harumasa's engine, you get an additional 20 from this one as well. So yeah, if you have all of these things, like you don't need to like really build for crit rate. Then instead you can pump in the rest in crit damage. Now I found that there are like 2 standout sets 4-piece that I like to run on him, and this is gonna be very team dependent. So if you're not running a full Electro team, so say that you're running, one of my favorite teams has been Harumasa, Caesar and Bernice, then Woodpecker Electro is gonna be the best set available. So 4-piece, we want to be landing a lot of crit rates, or we want to be landing a lot of critical hits with either basic attack, dodge counter and EX special. And this is no problem for Harumasa, like he gets a lot of crit rate, so we're gonna have at least like 2 of these buffs active at basically all times as long as he's on the field. And 2-piece increases crit rate by 8%, which you know is very nice. But if you run Harumasa together with like other electric agents, like Rina for example, then Thunder Metal is a very valuable pick. And the 4-piece of this reads, as long as an enemy in combat is shocked, the equipper's attack is increased by 28%. So once this is active, it is even slightly stronger than a fully stacked Woodpecker Electro. However, the fundamental only works if you're running him together with other electric agents. Otherwise, he doesn't have like the electric build-up himself to like keep this up enough for it to be worth it. So if you run Harumasa Electro team, fundamental. Any other team, go with Woodpecker Electro. And there is one last 4-piece I would like us to take a little bit of a look at. Now, if you play Harumasa kind of like a sub-DPS, or in a dual DPS setup, like say with Yanagi for example, a 4-piece Hormone Punk is actually really viable. So if you kind of split up the on-field time equally with another agent, Hormone Punk is your best option. The 4-piece upon entering combat or switching in, its user's attack increases by 25% for 10 seconds. This effect can trigger once every 20 seconds. So when we switch into Harumasa, we'll get like a big boost to our attack. But once 10 seconds has passed, we're like our set is kind of dead in the water. But like that doesn't really matter if we like switch in and like start doing something on another agent. I would run a Hormone Punk if I would run Harumasa and Miyabi, or if I was gonna be running Harumasa and Yanagi, for example. But if you're running a setup where Harumasa is kind of your only DPS and he has 80% or more of the on-field time, go with Woodpecker Electro instead. And Hormone Punk actually works kind of amazingly with one of the engines we're gonna take a look at in just a second. But first, let's go over the stats that we're looking for on our discs. For disc 6, you want an attack percentage. For disc 5, pen ratio is gonna serve you the absolute best. You can also go attack percentage or electric damage bonus, but pen ratio is gonna be the best stat. But if you get an attack percentage or electric that has godly substats, that will still win out over a pen ratio with like garbage substats. But if all substats are equal, pen ratio wins out. For disc 4, you either want crit rate or crit damage. So if you're really lacking on the crit rate, go crit rate. But since you also get it passively from your core skill, and if you have his engine, you get a bunch from that one, then you can go crit damage here. But if you're lacking crit rate, go crit rate, otherwise crit damage. And for the 2-piece, I found that the Branch and Blade Song is an excellent set. So this has kind of become my staple now on the creative beta server for like any sort of attacker. Like it's either a 2-piece Woodpecker or it is a 2-piece Branch and Blade Song, because getting an extra whooping 16% extra crit damage is very appreciated for a character looking for the crit stats. So let's look at Harumasa's engines. There are some good ones available for him, and attackers have access to like quite a lot of good engines. Like there are probably more good attacker engines than there are good attackers. So with the Sunshine Herb Case being his signature one, this is his best one. Main stat is crit damage, then it gives us crit rate 10%, dash attack, electro damage increases by 40%, and when any squad members applies either attribute anomaly or stuns an enemy, we gain an additional 10% crit rate. So this one fully, like when everything is active, 20% crit rate, 48% crit damage, 40% electric damage bonus to our dash attack. So like this is cracked, it gives Harumasa everything he wants. But if you're not pulling for this one, what are some good options? Well, we do have the steel cushion coming in at 82%. So I saw a drop off in performance by around 18% when I slapped on a steel cushion. Now what makes this his like second best one is that it has crit rate as an advanced stat, and we are looking for the crit stats. This one isn't perfect on him. Physical damage, we can't really make use of that, really. We do get 25% extra damage when we hit an enemy in the back, although that is quite awkward to do with Harumasa. But if you can pull it off on like a stunned enemy, you will benefit from that as well. After that, I found that the second best one is the Brimstone, clocking in at 80%. This is Soldier's one. Harumasa has quite an easy time to like stack this one up. The problem with this is that it does take some time to stack up. So if you're playing like kind of a quick swap sub DPS Harumasa, like, you know, he'll barely be done stacking this one until it's time to like switch out. But there is one A rank engine that is, you know, more readily available, that is actually freaking cracked, and it is the Drill Rig Red Axis. So where does most of Harumasa's damage come from? That's right, his dash attacks. And this one, even though it has kind of a bad advanced stat for him, the additional like ability, when launching an EX special attack or chain attack, electrified damage from basic attacks and dash attacks increases by 80% for 10 seconds. This effect can trigger once every 15 seconds. So this is an absolutely cracked like additional ability. 80% increase in damage, like his most like damaging move, insane. What is a little bit sad is that it comes with energy regen that we don't really need on him, although it does result in more EX special attacks happening. But yeah, this one is a cracked A rank engine for him. After that, we have the Cannon Rotor coming in at 74%. Once again, crit rate is a stat we can really make use of, and a flat 12% increase in attack. We say thank you very much. This is a good one, and all of the A rank ones are compared at 5 stars. Then we have the Marcato Desire, which is a new one that we're getting in 1.4 patch in an event, I'm assuming. And this one coming in at 73%. After that, we have the Starlight Engine at 72%. After that, we have the Gilded Blossom coming in at 70%. And finally, we have the Street Superstar at 68%. Now, I will say the Street Superstar is kind of fun. You get a very hard-hitting ultimate, but yeah, that is about it. So most free-to-play accessible one, Drill Rig Red Axis, simply because this gives you such a massive boost to what Harumasa loves to do the most. It's good. But if you have Steel Cushion, this one really helps out, like, you know, find the best stat for him. But remember to like try and position behind the enemy. Brimstone is a very good option. So when it comes to Harumasa's team, I tried to assemble every possible team I could think of, and I've also like tried all of these teams out, and all of them work. Some are stronger than others. The first team I assembled is quite a fun one because it's not the constellation you see every day. Harumasa, Kolida, and Lucy. Now, what I will say about this team, it is lacking a little bit in damage in some content. But if you remember, Harumasa is very incentivized to do his chain attack, because after he's done a chain attack, the 5th hit of his basic attack string will trigger more Electro Quivers. And Kolida is the queen of chain attacks. And Lucy is here to provide, you know, awesome buffs and make Kolida's passive trigger. For this one, I picked a Rocket Boo. Now, the second team is actually really strong. So Harumasa, Shingi, and Rina. If you pull for a Shingi, you probably don't use her like too much outside of a Jujuan team nowadays. But lo and behold, there is someone new that can really make use of Shingi. So As I said, you either want a stunner or an anomaly agent, and it kind of feels best if you have, of course, if you have both. But if you have to pick one, pick an anomaly. But this team where 3 people are electric, including the Bangbu, people are like enemies are gonna be shocked non-stop either way. So in a team like this, you don't really need like a separate anomaly agent, because these one together make up one anomaly agent. And in this team, like you can really feel Xingyi's like extra damage multiplier on stunned enemies. Like Harumasa actually hits like a truck with this. Now a very, very free-to-play accessible team is Harumasa, Anbi, and Rina. And once again, everybody is electric, so like people will still be afflicted by shock. So like in a team like this, I'd definitely run fundamental. Same with the last team we talked about. Yeah, people may not be using their Anbi too much, but Anbi is quite a decent little stunner. With investment, she definitely does her job well. Now another team that incorporates Harumasa's team leader would be Miyabi, Harumasa, and Rina, and Agent Gulliver for the Bangbu. This team is quite fun. Miyabi is obviously an anomaly agent, so really good at applying her element, and she also gives her teammate an easier time applying their anomaly. What I will say though, that this team is very much like with Harumasa in mind. There are better teams for Miyabi, but it is, if you want to utilize your Harumasa, this is definitely a good team. Then we have another favorite that I've been running, which has been Harumasa, Lighter, and Bernice, and with the red Moccus. Now, Lighter buffs Bernice to like insane levels, and I found that Harumasa and Bernice might be my favorite combo in terms of like running an anomaly with him, because Harumasa doesn't really need to switch out. Like he can keep the action going, and Bernice being able to like off-field apply burn to enemies, like have the Electro Quivers like just come raining in over Harumasa, actually works really well. So this team, it definitely gets like a high approval from me. Another team, if you want to be utilizing your Grace a bit, would be Harumasa, Grace, and Rina. Once again, like a full Electro team, works decent. And now another team to look at is Harumasa, Caesar, and Yanagi. Harumasa loves the buff he gets from Caesar, and Yanagi's special disorder does trigger extra Electro Quivers. Just remember that effect has a 12 seconds cooldown, so you can't like, you know, spam out an unending amount of quivers. Another, a little bit more free-to-play friendly than the lighter one, would be Harumasa, Bernice, and Lucy. This team also works super well. Lucy buffs both Bernice and Harumasa, and Bangbu red Moccus. Then we have another Section 6 team, Miyabi, Harumasa, and Sokaku. This team is also really fun. Once again, there are better teammates for Miyabi, but in a team like this, you know, Harumasa is gonna thrive. And for the last team I could think of, I put Harumasa, Caesar, and Anbi. If you have Caesar's engine, Caesar will even help like Anbi out, being an even better stunner. And the Bangbu for this shouldn't be Gulliver, but instead Plugbu if you have it. But yeah, what is a little bit fun with Harumasa is that he is quite flexible when it comes to his team building. Like he goes with a lot of agents, some agents better than others, and preferably he likes to go with agents that are good at applying their attribute anomalies, like an anomaly agent. And if you can fit that in together with a stunner, you know, like that is ka-chow. Which is why one of my personal favorites is when you can have both of those worlds by bringing Lighter and Bernice. Now, as for his Mindscapes, he doesn't need any of them to work, although I do kind of wish his base level would have been with an M1. But his M1, the maximum stack limit of Electro Prison from basic attack Ha-Utu no Ya increases to 14 stacks. When an Electro Quiver is triggered, 2 consecutive Ha-Utu no Ya will be fired at the target. This is obviously like really good. The max stack base kit on the enemies is 8 stacks of Electro Prison. Being able to like stack 14 more times is a lot more slashing. So this is a big boost to Harumasa's power. As for his M2 Languish, when using a chain attack or ultimate, Harumasa gains 7 stacks of Electro Blitz up to a max of 7 stacks. While possessing Electro Blitz, the damage of dash attack, Hitten no Tsuru slash increased by 50%. So this is a 50% increase in damage to his most like hard-hitting ability that his entire kit revolves around. Consume 1 stack of Electro Blitz once dash attack Hitten no Tsuru slash ends. Now this is a very good one, and this one, like I kind of wish that his ultimate did something like this, like base kit, because right now his ultimate is like kind of a hard-hitting like smack, but it doesn't really provide him with anything. And like the damage numbers, like it hits weaker than Miyabi's ulti, but Miyabi's ulti still buffs Miyabi with 30% increased frost damage for, I think it was 10 or 12 seconds. Meanwhile, like Harumasa's ultimate doesn't even like spawn any Electro Quivers. And I do think that it should at least, you know, spawn 2, 6. I don't think that's too much to ask. But yeah, M2, obviously really freaking good. After that, it just increases level. And for his M4, now I will say his M4 is actually surprisingly good for an M4. Electro Piston now lasts for 20 seconds when dash attack hit the Notsuru. Slash hits enemies Harumasa against 30 decibels once per use of this skill. Upon activating ultimate, apply maximum stacks of Electro Piston to all on-field enemies. So this is kind of what I'm saying. Like, I don't feel like it would have been crazy if his ultimate had done this, like just base kit, to make his ultimate, you know, a little bit more threatening, or like feel a little bit more like an ultimate. But it's also cool to see like another Mindscape that boosts decibel regeneration. Miyabi is the only other character in the game that has this, so yeah, quite cool. And for his M6, after Haoto no Ya hits stun enemies or enemies under attribute anomalies, Harumasa will ignore 50% of the target's electric rest for 12 seconds. Every 12 times an enemy is hit by Haoto no Ya, trigger an extra electromagnetic explosion dealing 1500% of Harumasa's attack to the target as electric damage. Now, as an M6, I don't feel like this is, you know, necessarily the craziest or most fun we've ever seen. It will obviously be like a big boost in his power, but if you, the viewer, if you're going for Mindscapes for Harumasa and like wondering for a stopping point, I would kind of stop myself at 1 or 2. I myself, I'm not going for any Mindscapes of Harumasa. I'm gonna be happy with the free copy that we do get. And when it comes to which abilities to upgrade, the game does provide us with very good suggestion: core skill, and then dodge, then ultimate, then basic attack, and then EX attack. And then there's this button if needed. But yeah, the big one is definitely the dodge, but because that is where most of our damage is going to be coming from. So what I will say is that Harumasa might seem a lot more complicated than he actually is. Like, there's once again a lot of new terms, a lot of like new mechanics altogether. And like, it seems like a lot, but he's one of those characters you need to play him, like you need to try him out for like several hours until some of it like starts to click, and the more you play him, the more and more will click. And once you have the general rotation down, don't think that that's the end of his like capacity of his abilities, because then it becomes like a way of like, you know, or then it becomes a challenge of like fine-tuning it, being able to do it more efficiently, like faster. And personally, what I found to like be the biggest improvement when I was playing him is like remembering to press the special attack button at the end of the 5th attack string, at the end of his EX special, and at the end of his chain attack, to like kind of seamlessly go into Falling Feather. And like playing him efficiently and, you know, kind of feeling like you have a nice flow of it, kind of feels like a dance, and I kind of like it. And I will say that I do think that he has to work hard to like reach the numbers that some of the other agents do. And he's definitely like a character like for the people that like that doesn't want mindless combat, that want to like have a lot in their head during combat, because there is a lot to like maximizing the potential of this little archer. And I think it is an absolute like awesome move from Hoyo that we're getting this character for free. He definitely doesn't feel like a free character. He isn't less flashy for that sake. And I could definitely see like some people finding a new favorite agent to play with this character. So yeah, everybody, I do think that is it for the guide. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you found it enjoyable. And I hope you will find Harumasa enjoyable as well. Like I said, we will all be getting him for free. So I bet there is a lot of people that is gonna be like scratching their heads a little bit, like wondering how to master this guy. And if you were one of those, I hope I could help you out somewhat. As of time of recording, I've only played him quite extensively on the creator beta servers, but I'm sure there's more like, you know, little tips and tricks to be unlocked when it comes to Harumasa in the near future once he goes live to the public. So if anybody has any cool tips for, you know, your fellow community members, do let everybody know down in the comments. If you found the guide helpful in any way, I would find it super helpful with a thumbs up to help with the algorithm. And if you enjoy Zenless on Zero content, which I'm kind of guessing if you sat through an entire guide, maybe stick around the channel, maybe hit that subscribe button, because I put out Zenless every gosh darn day. And everybody, I hope that you're super excited for the 1.4. I sure as heck am. The developers have said that they kind of want to throw a party for us, the players. And that is honestly what 1.4 feels like. It feels like a grand ass party. And you know, they're even handing out gifts. The gift. Everybody, stay safe. Until next time, Hako out.